our certified staff. Despite many months of bargaining, teachers in the TRSU have been working without a contract since July 1st of 2025. The TRSU board continues to put forward insufficient offers that leave certified staff worse off with increases that do not keep up with inflation. We need a fair contract that allows TRSU to recruit and retain highly qualified staff so we can continue to create the educational environment our students deserve. A fair contract would include veteran teachers being paid for their experience. In order to best serve our students, we need our schools to be fully staffed. We want our school to remain competitive with districts and employees and employers in the area, making TRSU a more attractive place to work and live. We believe you have the power to make this happen. Sincerely, the undersigned employees of TRSU.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that wants to speak? Okay, that brings us to administrative reports.
Superintendent's report. So a couple actually things to talk about. To start, the written report that is in the packet refers to the education quality standards. The state has been doing research on what makes schools good and great. One of the areas of their research is deals with boards. In terms of board performance, what things do highly effective boards engage in. And so they have set up a number of standards that every year that they'll be rating the boards on. And so those are in there for the board to kind of take a look at, those rubrics. My recommendation is that the board probably put together a subcommittee that takes a look at those and decides which ones we may not be proficient in, and then puts together a plan to be approved by the board to get us over that proficiency line. The other thought is that those standards touch on a variety of different characteristics, and it might be a good way to connect with the community and talk with the community about which of these are most important to them, and those would be ones that the board would shoot to be exemplary. So just as a recommendation. One of the things that as we're getting into the budget season, pretty heavily so, and we're going to have a pretty good discussion about that in a little while, including all the good work that Cheryl did figuring out the tax rates today, based upon what we're talking about with our level service budget, is there has been questions that have been coming up around Act 70. And so typically what happens is when people ask the questions, I give them my best information that I have at the time, and then I go back and I do a little bit of research to make sure that what I relate is correct. And so I do want to touch on a couple of those things. One of the questions that's been coming up around Act 73 is what happens if it goes to the legislature, the recommendations about redistricting from the redistricting committee goes to the legislature, and the legislature refuses to take any action. And so there's a belief out there that everything comes to a stop. Some things do, some things don't. So the best information out there right now is the redistricting efforts come to a stop, obviously, if the legislature takes no action. But the other provisions of Act 73 we're still accountable for. The most notable one, which we'll touch on a little bit tonight during the budget discussion, is the class minimums that are a part of Act 73. Work would also continue on creating statewide proficiencies as well as statewide curriculum, things along those lines. Other questions that came up were about, especially with the Ludlam Mount Holly discussion last night, they do offer waivers, and maybe our schools will fall under the waiver system, and so we won't have to adjust. Our schools will not qualify for the waiver. They allow waivers for schools that are in a geographic extreme kind of setting away from everybody else with extreme travel distances. That is not our case, especially on the Green Mountain side, because we've got Cavendish within a 1.5 miles or 2 miles of Ludlam. In terms of the high school, we've got Springfield that's over the hill that we actually send kids to every day to go back and forth to the technical center. So trying to apply for a waiver under those provisions probably is not going to fly. The only other provision that you can apply for is if your school has a special program that exists nowhere else. And then the final piece about the waivers is they were never meant under the spirit of the law to be permanent. They were to give people a little bit of additional time to try to adjust, get their enrollments up to where they should be, or have a more structured consolidation at some point in time. The class minimums. There was a good question. I think it was Jed raised at the last meeting about, we've got these class minimums that the law requires. Are those an average or are those an absolute? Right? Because there was some discussion early on in the legislative session last year when they were developing the law that, it would be based upon, average class sizes. Right now, there are big components of that law that need to be defined by the Agency of Education. That has not been defined, whether those are absolutes or whether they are averages. Right now, on the AOE website, the way that it is written in their advisory, they are absolutes. And we'll touch on that a little bit tonight. There were also questions about this idea of all right, we're in compliance in terms of our class sizes, and we have a year that we're out of compliance. What happens? Well, if you're out of compliance for 3 years, the state can actually come in, take over your district and close your school. And so then the question is, okay, well, you got this 3-year window. If we're in compliance for 2 of the years and then out of compliance for 1, does it reset? Yes. But again, we go back to the spirit of the law. You cannot use that to keep a school open. The intent of it is that some of the smaller and medium-sized schools, right, you get bubbles sometimes and you get, a year where things are a little bit low. It's to accommodate for that. It is not meant to keep a school open whose numbers are chronic. So it's not there to kind of game the system. So just some parts and pieces I wanted to provide as much clarity as I could. Recognizing that there are a lot of definitions that still have not been defined. What does sparse mean? Things like that. What is a terminal class? And so the AOE, the expectation is that over the course of the next couple of months, they'll be providing clarification on what those terms are. That's the big piece of the superintendent.
Anybody have any questions about the report, either written or given? Right. So did everyone have an opportunity? Did everyone have an opportunity to read all of the principals' reports? Okay, so no questions about any of those. Facilities report.
So Todd is down at the basketball game. The door project is almost complete. That was started. Lynn and Blackman, the folks that are putting the class action lawsuit against Monsanto in terms of the PCBs, will be coming in. I'm still not clear why they would be testing, but they, as part of the data they're collecting for the lawsuit, they're going to come in and they're going to test Chester Andover over the vacation for PCBs. It's already been tested by the state. Nothing was found, but that work will be going on.
So it's the lawyers for Monsanto that are coming.
No, so the lawyers that are pursuing the class action lawsuit against Monsanto,
Okay. All right.
and we're a part of that class action.
Is there a cost to this testing for us? Okay.
Nope. No, there's another piece that was,
Sorry.
that's okay. It'll come back to me. It's been a long couple of days. Again, it's not clear why they're doing that in the building that, passed the state testing, but that's a part of the work that they're doing.
So as long as it's not a cost to us, then it's okay.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah.
Is it gonna be done during school hours or?
Nope, they're trying to come in. They're going to spend probably about 40 hours at Chester Andover over the holiday. Oh, the other one, I did check with legal counsel, right, Lynn and Blackman. After, we heard from the state about, what they were willing to do in terms of remediation with the high school, which obviously was not satisfactory to most people. The basic response was, well, they're supposed to do it. The money is not there. The state doesn't have the money. So there is no provision in the law that can allow us to compel them to change what they have decided to do. The only option, you would have would be to sue the state directly. You did follow up on that. That was the other piece.
Any other questions? Right, that brings us to curriculum report.
Louisa is here. Louisa, can you hear us? Oh,
Yes.
you're muted.
Absolutely, yes. Can you give me sharing rights?
You-
Or?
Should be good to go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me tonight. And let's see if you can see my page. Usually there is like a 5-10 seconds delay. Can you see my page or?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So first of all, I want to ask you if you have any questions on the report in general before I launch into the presentation. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but please feel free to stop me anytime for any questions. I love questions. I'm a former teacher, so we do love questions. So the first thing I want to report out is on the mentoring program. We have a strong mentoring program. At TRSU, we have been able to pair all of the new hires with a mentor, and we will continue to monitor in the hiring process. We still have quite a few positions open, and I'm also participating in the interview committees, so I'm aware of when the candidate will start and what the needs are. And so far, we have been very successful in pairing up all of the new hires with mentors. I have some graphs for you. I know you like graphs and you like percentages. The first one you see is the overall performance of our students in grades K through 6 in reading. And if you see the screen, you will see that we perform at the 59th percentile. For those of you who need a reminder what a percentile is, I will use an analogy. It's like if you are in a pool of 100 people, you are in a race and you are ahead of 59 people. That's pretty much how we can interpret the percentiles. So it is a little low, but it's not bad as compared to the state performance. Actually, TRSU in general does quite well as compared to the state average. Other states perform a little higher, other districts perform a little higher, but all in all, we are not doing too bad. This is the
Quick-
detail.
Quick
Yes,
question, Louisa, which grades are included in that? It says all grades. Is that
K through 6.
K through 6? Thank
K
you.
through 6. Yes, thank you so much for the clarification. K through 6. This is the detail. We see the sum of the grades perform really high. For instance, our 6th graders district-wide perform at the level of 71st percentile, which is really high. So again, in a pool of 100 people, we are ahead of 71 of them, which is really, really high. So this is good. And some grades, we're still working on improving their performance. Again, this is one indicator. This is for math, and this is K through 6, although the system here says K through 12. But this is really an indicator for K through 6 because from 7 to 12, we use a different tool. We use IXL instead. And overall, district-wide, we perform at the 61st percentile. And this is the breakdown by grade. And as you see, there are some grades that perform higher than others. And again, the 6th grade this year is exceptional, both in ELA and math. They're doing extremely well. And there are a couple of grades where we need to work more on the intervention side. Now I'm going to show you a nice comparison. I know you like 2 to 3 year comparisons. I put together a comparison of the same cohort. So these are the same students and how they performed on the first benchmark assessment, which is the fall assessment, as they return to school after the summer vacation. And there is always a little bit of a learning loss. But our students, so the blue histograms, the bar graph in blue, these are the students last year upon the return from summer vacation, and the red one is where the students are now. And beside the outlier on first grade, you can see that our students performed better on this fall benchmark as compared to last year. So they are retaining more information year by year. This is for reading, and this is for math. We have two outliers here in third and first grade, but all of the other ones show a higher retention of the learning and information. Sorry. This is the graph for 7 through 12. This is for math. And as you see, we are still relatively new to this screener. I expect the performance of the students to improve as we use this tool with more fidelity, because again, they're relatively new to this one, and the data is really, really new. So I can't even show you a comparison for these ones, because last year we were using it sporadically. So this year we're more consistent, and I'm sure next year I will be able to show you 2-year comparison. So this was math, and this is ELA 7 through 12, which is basically Green Mountain. And then I was not able to bring you the VCAP assessment as compared to the state. I do have all the graphs. Lane has seen them. I'm ready to launch. Unfortunately, they're still under embargo. So the only data we were able to release was individual data, individual performance that were sent home with the report cards. And the state has released the fact sheets just to compare their performance statewide over 3 years. And I linked it to the presentation if you want to look at it. But I do have nice graphs ready for you to look at. As soon as they release the embargo, I'll come back and we're going to look at those together. I included a report from our MLSS coach, Mrs. Dr. Audrey Richardson. She is our coach, and she's visiting schools. She started with Cavendish and Ludlow, and then she expanded into Mount Holly and Chester. And then in the second semester, we're going to work at GM more in detail. She has been observing EST meetings. She has been collecting data. She has some feedback for us, and I have a meeting scheduled for January for the principals, myself, Lane, and the coach to discuss what she has observed, areas for improvement and areas of strength. And she praised the work the principals have been doing to support our students, run the data teams, and in general being very supportive of this process, which over time will certainly reflect on the student performance. This is an area of strength for us. It's really a nice system. So if you have any questions, I also put in a slide to remind myself to talk about the OGAP training. As of January 2026, we will start the last and final session for OGAP training. And once this concludes, which is at the end of the middle end of February, all of the teachers in TRSU will be trained to OGAP, which is this ongoing assessment for math, and is one of the goals that TRSU had to complete within 3 years. So I need to credit my predecessors for starting this process, and is a goal we will achieve by the end of February, which is amazing. We have already seen some improvements. In fact, last year, in one of the presentations, I brought you some graphs showing how the teachers who underwent OGAP training and the performance of the students are directly correlated in increasing the performance. And then I have slides talking about current initiatives. We are joining this statewide initiative on creating new curricular maps that have EQS standards embedded and IRIS standards. We are also revamping curriculum maps. I have a nice group of educators and administrators who are joining me, both to the sessions in person at Lake Maury virtual sessions and the sessions that we will start in person after school in January. And just a little more, we are creating, remember last year we were starting a walkthrough tool for informal observations to determine if our practices, teaching practices were inclusive enough. We are finalizing the tool. We had a nice meeting at the beginning of December. We're going to refine the tool. We're going to calibrate it. Today we had a nice conversation with Lane about the calibration of this tool. And once we launch it, we will be able to observe again areas of strength in terms of inclusion and areas where we need to improve. So I look forward to finalizing this tool, and then I will bring back to you for discussion and just acknowledgement. And then I had a nice conversation with Dr. Erin Davis. She's the Chief Academic Officer, the new Chief Academic Officer for Vermont Agency of Education. I was discussing with her our choice for the curricular resource of ELA for grades K through 6. I was confirmed that that's the best curricular program we can have for elementary school. The state strongly suggests it, especially because it does integrate science and social studies into it. With this being said, this is not the only opportunity for our teachers to teach science and social studies. There are other curricular resources that we use, and teachers do expand on those disciplines as well. And then that's pretty much it. Do you have any questions for me?
The mystery science, I'm sorry, what was the mystery science?
Yes, that's an additional curricular resource that our elementary teachers use.
Oh, she does.
I can go back. Yeah.
No, Lisa.
I was just going to ask if there are any assessments in common between like the 5th and 6th graders and 7th and 8th graders, or if those are completely separate assessments, and if there's any way to kind of translate or project one to the other.
So the assessments as of now, they are different because we use different curricular resources, but they are all calibrated to the science standards. And so that's the trajectory that we want to see. That's the growth that we want to see. The NGSS standards. Sorry, there was a question about the curricular resources. So under Mystery Science, I listed Facing History and Ourselves, which is the social studies additional resource that elementary teachers use.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anybody have any other questions for Lisa? All right, that brings us to the financial report, so the budget overview.
I have two things before we get to the budget. One, for financial, I don't think I have any new over and under since our last. We spent 36.2% of the budget, which is good for this time of year. And I think what was on here last time. Any questions about the financial? Anybody need any support in understanding what that financial actually says? I care. Okay, announced tuition. We have to do this annually, and it's what we report to the state that others we charge out for tuition for elementary and high school. We pick a rate now. There are formulas that it's based on. I found out that they work very well, so I kind of base it on what our prior year was and what our prior year allowable is. So I do a statistical report at the end of each school year, and they come back and they said, this is what you're allowed to charge. And then we have the ability to go back to the districts that we collected tuition from. And if it's in plus or minus 3%, we get to either refund that difference or pay that difference. And so I've done that. So Green Mountains last year we charged 22,000 and it came back at 23,784. So I've done that invoicing to those other districts. So now we have to set it for FY 27. And I spoke with Wayne about this. So K through 6, we set at 16,000 last year, and it came in at $20,005. Secondary, we set at 22,000, it came in 23,780.
Can you repeat, sir?
So,
Can you repeat those?
so last year was 16,000 and 22,000. The allowable came in at $20,005 and 23,784. So I spoke with Elaine today. My suggestion would be, we don't really get any tuition kids for elementary school, but if we do get them, we should get what it costs us to educate. So
Yeah.
I would say set that at 20,000. The secondary education, Lane and I talked about it and discussed $23,000. So if you're good with that, it would be a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Yeah. Of what she said.
You can't set that rate for the different elementary schools, like having to cost more than
They don't allow us to do that.
they don't, okay. So this is just an average of the two probably. Okay,
Oh, good.
Yeah, good.
You got it.
Yeah, now I'll
$20,005 and
Scott, so it was Scott and Jerry.
But we're gonna set it at 20,000 and 23,000.
23.
Could you state your motion?
Was the second one 23 or 20?
23.
Thank you.
So we're set elementary at 20.
Yeah.
And I move to set the new rate at 20,000 for elementary and 23,000 for high school.
I'll send you.
Yep.
Seconded by Jerry. Is there any further discussion?
no,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Abbreviated version. There's a lot of things that we've been talking about kind of in the open forums across the districts that go into education funding itself, and the idea that the fundamental flaw in terms of the taxes that people are paying has to do with how they have set up education funding in the state of Vermont. In terms of the Green Mountain budget, what we are shooting for is a level service budget, so we're not asking for anything more. We're not trying to give anything up. We just want to try to bring into the next year the same programs and services that we currently offer. And so the budget that we talked about last time, this budget, that goal has remained unchanged. Just a really quick reminder and a primer in terms of how education funding works in the state of Vermont. There is local control. Your local control is the ability to determine what your budget is. You have local control over identifying the needs and what you feel is required to pay for those locally. What you do not have control over is your tax rate. Because after that budget is voted in and it leaves your hand, it goes to the state. They collect all the budgets that were voted in from all the towns across the state of Vermont. They add it all up. They got this gigantic chunk of money that they need to raise to pay those bills that the districts have sent them. And then that gets distributed, that gets paid for equally by all the taxpayers in the state. So again, it's really important for people to understand that are looking at this either now or a little bit later online, is that we control what our budget is, but we do not control what our tax rates are.
So, question.
Yeah.
Act 60, was it Act 60 or Act 46 that when it went into place, if it didn't show improvement on cost spending, we wouldn't have to pay it?
I don't recall which of those parts and pieces. My guess would be Act 46. Because when Act 46 went into place, so that was the consolidation of districts and did things like shut down Black River High School here. There was an expectation, it was written into the law that the state actually had to report out on those two things. What was the impact on academic achievement and what was saved? The state did the reports, but they didn't provide that data.
So next question, Act 60. Once Act 73 went through, Act 60 was supposed to be.
That I don't know. Act 60 was the act that set up education funding in the state of Vermont back in 1997. And it had the singular goal of equalizing educational opportunity. So basically what it did, it was that wealth redistribution model. it took a look and said, hey, you got some real wealthy powerhouse districts, and wealth correlates directly to student performance. And they said, well, that's not really fair. All students should have equal opportunity. The only way that we can do that is if they have equal wealth. And so it was a redistribution. They took money from the wealthy towns, and they gave it to the poorer towns. And that's what the equalization was all about. But it's also one of the reasons why the taxes in Vermont are high, is that when you do that, the schools that benefited the most from that redistribution of wealth were ones that, you know, I use the expression around life support. They were dying.
And most of the schools.
They couldn't sustain themselves, their towns couldn't sustain them. And so what ended up happening was when the wealth was redistributed, you put them on life support, and life support is expensive. And the mechanisms that caused them to be unsustainable in the first place were never fixed. A lot of it had to do with just not having enough economic activity within the towns to generate taxes. Like IBM was a powerhouse, right? The second biggest IBM plant in the world was up at Essex Junction, which is why in the 70s, 80s, they were the powerhouse school in the state. It's not really the town's fault that they didn't do that economic investment. It's the state's.
Sure.
There are so many rules and laws that this state has that blocks businesses from coming in and setting up shop here, that they've kind of not fixed the fundamental problem. So, yeah, good questions. The more specific ones you have, I would say I don't know the answer to, but the Act 60 piece, that ended up being enshrined after a Supreme Court case, the idea that you have to have equal opportunity. So that's the piece that we're kind of stuck with. So the only levers that the system has right now, which Act 73 is trying to pull a little bit, is shutting down those schools that are on life support.
Right.
And they didn't want to do it directly, because if you do that directly, you're going to have to face the backlash of all those towns, which is a lot of towns.
Yeah.
Right. The wealthy areas are Chittenden County, and then there's everybody else.
Right.
And so they hid it within the law, especially what would result in the closure of elementary schools, which is what they said they didn't want, by the thing that we're going to talk about a little bit later tonight, and that's those class size minimums. Those elementary schools that are on life support, because it's usually the smaller elementaries and the smaller high schools, they're never going to be able to reach those numbers.
Right.
Yeah. And so again,
And it's only getting worse.
yeah. So good questions. But again, the big idea here is what we have control over and what we don't. And what we don't have control over, as long as we don't go over the excess spending threshold, is what our tax rates are. So a comparison, really quick. So the current budget that we are living with right now, this current school year, 18.6 million. The proposed budget for next year is 19.4, which is an increase of 835,000. And we'll go into the details about where that comes from. Basically, most of it is things get more expensive from year to year, right? Because we're not adding staff. Not really adding programs. So the big cost driver, and this was a whole other discussion, because Act 60 has actually played into the increases that we're seeing in special education. Biggest increase that Green Mountain is looking at is from special education, and that's a little over $500,000 increase. A little bit of that is because of new kids that need extensive services. The majority of it is the fact that the services that they are already receiving now and will receive next year, the cost of those services has increased dramatically.
Are those services in our district, like in our school?
So-
Or are we still trucking?
Yes and no.
'Cause I know the travel cost is astronomical.
It's not unusual to be well over 100,000 for the services in the places where they're sent. And unfortunately, right, we're in southern Vermont, so everything is far apart. So the places where we send them are usually an hour and a half away. And so there's that travel cost in there, which adds up to quite a bit. The students that we're seeing and the populations that have been seeing increases in needs in terms of services over time are the most expensive ones to serve, and that's our autism students, and that's our students with emotional disabilities. Those where we can, right? The goal is to have them here. But when you get some of the little ones, and like I said, the behaviors are pretty extreme. It's violence, it's kicking, screaming, biting, and inability to regulate themselves. So sometimes they're in that state for an hour or more at a time. And so we send them off to people that have the education and the training to hopefully be able to, remediate, help them learn how to regulate.
Wayne, what are we seeing for like a year in, year out increase in the amount of special education students?
Actually, you know what? Got the slide later on down here.
Okay.
So over the last 5 years, autism has increased the most dramatically. It's been a 60% increase in the percentage of kids that have autism. Emotional disturbance has been a 45% increase over the last 5 years or so. What happens in the state of Vermont, and I think it goes back to, again, Act 60, that redistribution of wealth. Vermont does not have a lot of businesses and services in it that provide a livable wage. There's a lot of businesses and services, but it's hospitality, it's food services, it's tourism.
Yes.
Those don't typically provide a livable wage. So you have families that are in chronic financial stress. You start adding in more of the programs that the legislature has added in over the last couple of years, more subsidy programs where you're taking from one group and giving to another. A lot of those folks that are in what we call that working poor category, they're above the poverty line, below the livable wage. They're having to pay those subsidies too. They're having money taken from them and redistributed, which adds to their stress. That chronic stress in families correlates directly with the disabilities that we're seeing that are on the rise. So again, this whole education funding system may be playing a big role in all the things that we're experiencing that, aren't things we want to experience. Yeah, no, really good questions.
Thank you.
So the 236,000, that is a contingency that's built in. That has to do with, where we expect, negotiations with the teachers and the support staff to land, as well as their, yearly raises and whatnot. Because we have to build that in to have that money available, because that'll be a mandated cost. It's something that we have to pay. It'll be required by contract. This 189,000, that's central office and Title II. We were trying to weed the two out a little earlier, but we wanted to make sure that we got the numbers right, and we weren't quite sure, so they are combined right now. Title II funding is grant funding from the federal government that's used for training for staff, for principals, to make sure that we're keeping up on what's best practice in education and applying that to what we're doing in our jobs here and the work that we do with kids. The federal government has cut that. It is work that we still need to continue doing. And so we're building in money to actually cover that so that work can continue after the grant fades away. The central office portion of this has to do with a reassessment. The staff, teachers, who were just here a little while ago, they have a union that represents them to come in and make sure that their wages are competitive and their benefits are competitive with the teachers around the state. The non-bargaining staff do not have them. And so under policy governance, one of your policies requires me to go out, take a look at what the demographics are in terms of the people that work that are not represented by a union, and get us to a level where their salaries are competitive with the demographic and around the state. And so some of that money is to get some of those folks up to where they should be. Probably about 3/4 of that is Title II, and the last quarter of that is the central office. You had some folks in terms of those non-bargaining staff that were 10,000 or more off, where they should be relative to the demographics. Food service support. We have the food service program. Money is raised from that, but the cost of the food has gone up with everything that's happening in and around the country, and so we need more money to make sure that is in the black at the end of the year. And you also have a subsidy cliff. Last year there was $415,000 it was carryover, right? From the previous year, to help reduce people's taxes. And Kelly Tarbell used, the metaphor of it being a coupon, right? You use the coupon, you don't have a coupon this year. So that 415,000 that was used last year to subsidize people's taxes is no longer available to subsidize this year. So it has to be made up for from the taxpayers. That's the same thing that's happening this year, by the way, at the state level. One of the reasons that taxes is going up was last year at the state level, they pulled 100 million out of the general fund to subsidize people's taxes in the education fund. They are not doing that this year. So there's 100 million
Did the governor just say something about buying down the taxes?
Yeah, he's changing his mind.
Yeah.
He's changing his mind because it's not a good political look.
Right.
It looks like the reason that they weren't going to subsidize things again this year was because he's trying to force through Act 73, despite the fact that most people aren't completely in agreement with it. We do have some savings, 170,000 that was planned for grant cuts that we expected to come in the last budget. There's 250,000 that is normally in the budget that we don't need to include in this year's budget because the bond for the Chester Andover roof is now
No,
paid.
that was,
Oops, sorry.
that wasn't in the FEMA building. We put it in anticipating, maybe
Oh, the 250 or the
250.
250. That's right. Remember that we were planning on doing the construction on Chester Andover. So we put that in there to be able to get that started. It is not needed because it actually looks like FEMA may come through. So we don't need that money this year. So it's not a part of the budget. We had 25,000 in last year's budget that's not needed in this year's budget because it was used to purchase a driver's education car, one-time cost. Questions on those parts and pieces, or Cheryl's got the deeper details if there are.
My question's not about the last slide, but kind of from Joe Fromberger. What's our plan for process? Are we in some sort of break at this point?
I think I need to start. We have over 300,000 in that account now. So I think that if we can replace a couple of a year, replenish it at the same time.
Yeah, what we used to do in the old district is we were another district that had its own bus fleet. Is we were on a 6-year rotation. No bus was more than 6 years old. And they tend to cost, I don't know after tariffs and things, but prior to, a new bus with all the cameras and the paint put on was usually somewhere around 85.
I think it's much more than that.
I'm sure it's more than that now. but-
We're 100.
My question is so, because I know that we haven't, like, I know we've been out of, like, they've been paid for a bit. Like, when should we start that? Should that be included in this budget?
So I don't think we need to budget for it because we have it. in
300,000.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think we still have 90,000 a year going into that reserve, which is quite cover a bus.
Okay.
It would keep replenishing that as we.
So is that something we should maybe put on the plate for post budget discussion to get that started?
Yeah, it might not be a bad idea if they're aging out, if they're not on a plan, but usually what you try to do is get it set up so every 6 years you replace them. So you replace them.
Yeah. And we've been out of renting, leasing.
We actually, just so people are aware, we did have some discussions about reaching out to see contracted services to come in and one of the missing brushes to see what the cost would
That's what I
be.
was wondering.
They didn't want to touch us because of our location. They just couldn't get people here and they couldn't get the job. So it at least currently and for the foreseeable future, even if it was something that we want to do, it wouldn't be cheaper, but even if it was something we wanted to do just to make sure that, we're getting drivers, it's not something in any of
We also want to have buses in garages and we don't.
Yeah.
How old was our oldest bus?
I think we did 2018 or 19.
That's our oldest.
It's our oldest.
Actually, I think we bought them in 19 and 20s.
You bought them all
So
at
it's
once?
time. Yeah, so it's time. Yeah, that
Yeah, you should be,
Start doing one.
yeah.
was doing one a year.
Cycle
Okay.
now.
So, kind of towards the end here before we get into tax rates. Capital reserve is 410,000 in there right now. The end of year surplus at the end of the last fiscal year, right? It's kind of weird how these work across 3 fiscal years. There was 626,000. You use that 415,000 in this current year's budget to help subsidize taxes. And then you also voted last year to put 357,000 of it into facilities reserve. We ended up at the end of the year with a small deficit, mostly due to increases in special education costs. We have to correct that deficit, but we're expected to have a surplus at the end of this year, which will more than cover it.
Because of the bond and 170,000 surplus. Not we'll have to address it.
Yep. So thoughts and questions, again, this one Cheryl will be able to answer the question. Give you a second to take a look at that, and then I'll go through the explanation, because this is usually what people care about. So, one of the things last year that made it difficult, and it's actually very pronounced this year, is the impact that that common level of appraisal has. They kind of hit it last year. They added another factor into the formula so that you couldn't compare that year with other years. 2/3 or 3/4 of the increases that the district saw last year was due to CLA. But again, it was hidden, so it was hard to kind of suss out. So what we're looking at with this level service budget, what we just talked about, right? Not adding anything, just trying to keep things going the way that they currently are. This is how things would fall out. So tax rate. So this is what you pay per $100 of value on your property. So in Baltimore, it's currently, this current year that we're in, it's 128. It would go to 145. Andover, 196. It would go down to 120, probably because did you guys just reassess?
Sure did.
Yep. Chester, right, 186 to 222. Cavendish, $1.98 per $100 of assessed value to 238. This is the change. So let's use Cavendish because it's the highest right now. Right, they're looking at a 40-cent increase in terms of their tax rate. This is how much of it's due to the schools statewide, because remember, all the taxpayers pay the bills, so this isn't us that's causing this. This is the statewide education fund. This is how much is due to CLA. Right, so the CLA, in other words, the value of your property increases, which is a good thing. But the state expects you to pay more because it's increased. It's probably the simplest way to explain it. They go out and do a big study every year, and they take a look at what houses are selling for in each of the towns, and then they use that to kind of figure out what people should be paying if it's different than what the towns have assessed them at.
So Andover's CLA is looking like it's gonna be 111% over what the state rate is. So while that feels really good, probably your assessment went up.
Way.
Yeah.
Yep.
So while you went down 76, you're probably gonna equal out. In theory, the math is supposed to be your CLA adjusts your assessment to what your house is really valued at. So when they do the assessment, theoretically, you should be paying the same amount of taxes. I've been experienced that yet. So we haven't. Theoretically,
Basically went through and doubled.
really.
That was a process.
Yeah.
So the question is where's all that extra money there?
Yeah.
Taking and going. Certainly not in the education. That's what everyone. So in terms of a number that is a little bit more understandable for folks, in Baltimore, based upon this, what you will see is for every $100,000 of value of your property, you would see $170 increase. Right, $100 of that is due to the changes in terms of the education needs across the state. $70 of it would be due to changes in local property values. Andover, you're supposedly saving $760 per 100,000 value, and all that's due to because you reassess. That's usually what happens. Usually, what happens is you get a really good year right after a reassessment. Chester, you're looking at an increase of $360 per 100,000 $200,000 of assessed value. $100 of that is due to education, 260 is due to the CLA change, property value change. And then similar situation, Cavendish is 400, $100 of it's due to education, $300 of it's due to changes. So hopefully that makes a little bit sense. But it is not a pretty picture.
When is Chester due for reassessment?
They said it was gonna be, I think we're due, but they said they couldn't get anyone to like.
Still backlog.
There's only like
Always wait
two
that long,
people that do the assessment in the state, and everybody's very low.
And technically, I think if you were a certain percentage away from the assessed value, you were supposed to have it done within 2 years.
Yeah, I think Julie said at last, like, we're being like maybe 2029 if we're lucky, by the time they get it done.
I guess the question that I have, which is only partially related to what we're talking about here, so I apologize for that. But if the state is doing a yearly annual survey and setting what our taxes are based upon that assessment, what the heck do we need to have state town assessment? Why are we spending the time and money? I don't know. Just seems odd.
Keep it in something.
Didn't fall for it?
What'd you say?
Wasn't your assessment last year?
So last year, our tax rates were like flat, they were fine. So
Right.
now we're gonna start to see the increase. based
Yeah,
on-
so now stuff is gonna start creeping up again. Right, you got on the school side of things, you have all those schools that are on life support that can't sustain themselves, they get more expensive each year.
Right.
Just the way the system works. Act 73, I want to talk about this just for a couple of minutes, because these are things that we need to start thinking about now. And we need to start reaching out to our communities to start having some discussions, hopefully getting some folks to show up at the open forums. Board members, the board itself may want to, put in a little subcommittee that's a structural change subcommittee to really kind of plan out, how these changes might occur and what's the best way to do them. The biggest piece that even if the redistricting effort fails, right, the redistricting comes to a screeching halt, these things still exist. That's what I'm getting right now when I'm talking to the folks that are in the know. And so that's the important word there, beginning in the 2026-27 school year, which is next year, public schools have to comply with these class size minimum standards. We talked a little bit about this early on. This is directly from the AOE website, this wording. It does not say anything about averages. So right now, unless they change what they have on that site, these are absolutes. You have to have 10 or more students in a grade 1 class. In grades 2 through 5, you've got to have at least 12. Grade 6 through 8, you got to have 15. Grade 9 through 12, you got to have 18. And here is the kicker. Here's where you know why they did this. You see it right in the law. If a school fails to meet these class size minimums, what do? Take administrative control of a district and require a school to close or consolidate. And 3 years doesn't mean you get 3 years. 3 years means you get 2.
Right.
Because at the start of the third year, if you're out of compliance, that's when they can act. So it's kind of important to recognize. So one of the discussions that we started to have, and poor Pam was part of one in terms of the high school today, was where do we currently stand in terms of our class sizes? And what can we do to bring things into compliance without throwing the whole world into chaos? So we're going to go through the 3 schools. So we've got Chester Andover. This is their enrollment overall going back to 2019. You can see the trend line is down a little bit based upon the data that we've got. Chester Andover has been losing about 5 students per year.
5.
Yeah, on average. So there is a declining population there. And again, things get more expensive, right, because of economy of scale and things get a little bit smaller. They're in pretty good shape in terms of class sizes.
Yeah.
So if you take a look at far left column, right, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and I know Joey's online. We got to talk about why you're doing multi-grade classes in 5 and 6 when you could have single grades. The green here Okay, so grade, this is how many students are currently enrolled in each of those classes, and this is the minimum that has to be there. So if it's green, it means we're good. If it's red, it means we're out of compliance. And so there's a little bit of work that would need to happen at Chester Andover to get us in compliance with the requirements of that 73. That's your question for we move to the other two. So Cavendish, right, again, declining trend line there. They're losing about 4 students per year on average if we look back all the way to 2019. Class sizes a little more problematic.
Wow.
And the reason that the pre-K and the K are in the green is there is no class size limit on that. Right there, the state has said that these are priorities for making sure that kids get a good education in the later years. So we don't have to worry, at least in pre-K and K, but we do have to worry in grades, 1 on up. And so again, we're supposed to be beginning this next year. So this is an area where I really need people to start coming out to open forums and start having some discussions about, what can we do to make sure that these are high school. They're losing about 2 kids per year. If we take a look back over back to 2019. They're in a position which many high schools across the state are in because of their electives. You want to have a broad base of electives for students, but that means you end up having small classes. So in terms of grades 7 through 8, they are averaging about 13.2 students per section, right? The requirement is 15, so they've got some work to do. It's not a huge heavy lift, but they've got some work to do. The heavy lift, if the state sticks with this and the legislature changes nothing, is at the high school itself. In grades 9 through 12, they're averaging about 9.7 kids per class.
Wow.
Means there's some large classes. There are some classes with 18 kids in it. There's some classes with 3 and 4. But the average is 9.7, and they're supposed to be at 8. So again, this plays into budget discussions, right? Because it comes down to staffing, which is what the intent of the law really was. I did some calculations at the end of last year based upon the data that I could find from the state to come into compliance with this requirement statewide would require the cutting of 1,400 teachers. Statewide as a minimum.
Mike Griffin has his hand raised.
So, thoughts, questions? Hopefully that wasn't too painful, but budgets always are.
Any questions? Absorb? Okay. While he's doing that, maybe I'll put it in for maybe future meeting agenda items, but I think that it's going to be dire this year that the board starts to make a, concerted effort going out and talking to our constituents
Sure.
about that, because I think again, despite all of the education last year, I did not have full understanding. And we've got to get people to understand that we're not controlling these taxes.
Yep.
So I'll just put it up for the next one, unless people object.
No, not at all.
Yep.
Okay, so that brings us to old business. So you have your executive limitations, second read, EL 2.4, 2.5, 2.3, 2.6. Everyone have an opportunity to review those. Was there any discussion, questions? If there's not, looking for a motion. A motion.
We'll get it.
Motion so made.
Second.
You want it for all or just
No, just,
One and
yeah, one at a time.
just for one.
Yeah, so EL 2.4. Yeah.
Go for it.
So Rick and Kate.
Can I just ask what the motion is?
To approve.
To approve executive limitation 2.4. So
The interpretation of?
yes.
Correct.
I'm saying, hey, Mike, we'll have you talk at public comment. Just don't want you to think I'm ignoring you. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So EL 2.4. So we'll just go down now 2.5.
So moved.
Nothing 8. PT, sorry. All right. So motion to accept the interpretation of EL 2.5. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, EL 2.3.
Seconded.
Who is that? And Rick, okay.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then EL 2.6.
Moved. Second.
Scott. Jerry. Sorry, who was the second? Jerry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That brings us to new business. So you've got your first read of executive limitations, EL 2.7, benefits. And a chance to review it or have any comments. If not, it'll come back next month.
Yeah.
All right, now that's going to bring us to a parental request to waive tuition.
Hi, I'm Rachel. This is my husband Alex. We're technically residents of Springfield. But we're here today to see if there's any way to use school choice that's used for high school for our kids in Chester to go to Chester Public Schools.
so it'd be tuition. Parents can come in on tuition.
So school,
Yeah, I think we know.
school choice only unfortunately applies high school 9 to 12 in the classical sense. So it would be looking for a waive of tuition or a reduction in tuition, I believe. Correct
Or
me.
using the high school way for like Springfield to pay Chester if we didn't bring our kids starting in kindergarten as opposed to just high school. I don't know if there's a way to do that.
It's kind of using the high school model, right? I mean,
Yeah.
explain to me how the high school model exactly works, but my understanding is you have a school choice, correct? You can go to
Yeah.
Green Mountain if we lived in Springfield. So basically using that model for K through 8 by using our tax money that we pay Springfield to go to Chester and
Yeah.
So, no, I apologize, we're, the law for that is explicit about 9 to 12.
9 to 12. So that's why we weren't sure if we could use some sort of model. And I wasn't sure if this has been done between, Springfield and Chester Andover before.
Are you aware of any tuition?
So recap, you're asking from the high school here.
We're at
Starting kindergarten
kindergarten.
to get,
So our 4-year-old will start kindergarten in 2027. We obviously are residents of Springfield, but we're more interested in the Chester public school system.
I'm getting in now.
Yeah. And we're kind of like so close to the Springfield Chester line. We thought that our address we'd be able to choose. But unfortunately, because we pay taxes in Springfield, we wouldn't be able to do that. So we'd have to pay out of tuition or out of pretty much district tuition, which we can't afford.
Sure.
So we were looking for any way to get our kids to Chester instead of Springfield.
Have you discussed anything with the school board in Springfield?
No.
No, we wanted to come to you guys first to see what thoughts were. So really the reason we're here now and our 4-year-old's not starting till 27 is they're opening up a new, our daycare center that we've been in for 3 years. They're opening up that new center right in front of the middle school. And we have the opportunity just to move him and our 1-year-old with their teachers that they're starting in August. So that's where we're just coming now, just trying to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, makes sense.
And see where things stand.
Yeah, I'm not aware. I mean, I think if it's gonna be tuition,
Yeah.
Springfield School Board need to.
So it's possible that the Springfield School Board could grant. It's unlikely that they would. To pay the tuition difference. The other possibility, and again, it would depends on a lot of things that's out there that is done, is that sometimes there's an exchange of students.
Yeah.
Right. Because the dollar value is really what they call the ADM, which is irrelevant to the conversation. But you know, if you have the discussion with the Springfield School Board and talk with them, you know, the first request would be, you know, the tuition. Would they be willing to pay the tuition? If not, the other possibility is you know, a student exchange. You know, we take a Springfield student in exchange that they take one of ours that may be interested in going. From what I can see right here and now, unless the board here is willing to kind of waive the tuition, which would be unlikely.
Is there any opportunity of just like a discounted tuition or
Do we know the difference, the tuition difference?
I can look it up.
Or I'm curious.
Springfield, I thought, is actually fairly high. High school is, I don't know about that. Yeah, because we all have to publish the announced tuition. That's what you voted on a little earlier.
Yeah, right.
Just kind of thinking, so would there be any fiscal benefit to, and not just, I don't mean just fiscal, but like, we're talking about having to like increase our numbers. Would that be helpful?
So the way that it works is that, you know, we talk about, right, we get the yield, we get so much from the state, you know, we're not supposed to talk about it in those terms, but we get so much per student from the state. That depends upon where they live. So in other words, if living in Springfield, if the student came here, Springfield still receives the full funding for the child.
Right.
It's really weird, under the high school choice program, the lottery system, that's how it works as well. If one of our students through the lottery goes to Springfield, we keep the ADM, Springfield just takes the kid. So it's strange, but that's how it works at the right place.
And we don't have such a system, a lottery system for elementary.
It's so the lottery system is set up by regulation.
And you don't think it would be possible to, if we agreed and like signed something to say we wouldn't use anything in Springfield, that they sent like our tax money to Chester? No.
I don't think legally you could.
Then I think you'd be artificially creating those gold towns again. People would be,
Right,
you know,
my problem too.
yeah. I think that the best first step is going to be talking to the Springfield School Board and see if they have any recommendations. And then maybe look at, or you can have a conversation.
I'm happy, you know, talking with Peter over there
Okay.
about a possible student exchange.
Okay.
I mean, so nothing's guaranteed, but
No.
if they have a student, you know, that wants to come here and vice versa, it's cost neutral.
Right.
So it's not a big deal.
No, we appreciate that.
Right.
That's actually,
Thank you.
it's good
Have a
to
great
see
day.
you.
Yeah, you too.
Springfield's allowable elementary rules 1870.
1870.
But they're allowable. So. But this coming year, we'd be asking for
2020, yeah.
That was already their published tuition. It was.
So there's this tuition gone as well.
Right.
So there's probably gonna do whether.
Yeah, that's usually done at the January, the announceations.
Yeah, and probably did say by January 15th, and you're going to be on the 15th. That's fine.
All right, keep us moving along. And I haven't seen, I don't know, has anyone seen?
No, I'm just emailing, texting Chris now from.
Okay, just want to make sure that. That's out. So committee reports. So if you recall, we asked Donovan, Kate, and Lois to come up with some new member orientation education.
And it was in the, it was what what we came up with was sent in the email.
Yeah, no, so I was gonna say, it was PDF, and then there's also 2 recommended books. So there's 2 copies here if you wanna quickly look at them. So this isn't a presentation of it. If you guys have thoughts, discussions, questions, recommendations, and then it would go back to the committee for anything, and then again, re-presented. That was quite a Herculean. Like that was impressive. 16-page PDF.
It was a lot, but it was very thorough.
It was.
Very thorough. Yeah, I was very impressed. I think my only thought, question, recommendation is it is exceptionally long. So I don't know if it can be condensed or put into some sort of skeleton attached to references.
Right.
I was just, I was kind of like looking back on the Brown Dog Education for Policy Governance, and I think only like 4 people completed that. So like, I want it to be something that's going to be easily digestible. But if you have a question, you've got easy access to a reference.
too. Yeah.
So I don't know if maybe it could be made into, some sort of like,
Okay, we can
like
look into,
hyperlinks,
we
like I have a
can
question
look
about
into that as a next step, sure.
yeah, that way, like, oh, I have a question about X, and they could access it, instead of trying to go through 160 pages. That's would be overwhelming. That's my only thought. I thought otherwise, I thought it was a very, very thorough.
Well done.
Yeah.
I thought it was very well done.
Anyone else?
I'm with it.
Okay, and then there's an RBTC update discussion, but I.
So this was so Kate is
Kate asked for it.
RVTC rep. I don't see her on that.
Okay.
Um,
So we can, like,
table.
table that until January unless there's objection.
No.
Okay, so that to January. Okay, so that brings us to our second public board comments. And I don't know if Mike is still on.
Yeah.
Okay,
Lane, I think I know the answer to this question, but when they talk about class sizes and minimums and stuff, they talk about electives, they're talking about like AP classes and stuff too, right?
So there are exclusions at the high school level. So their AP classes are excluded, so they don't have to meet the count. The other that doesn't have to meet the count, but they have not defined what it means, is terminal classes, is the term they use. So our assumption is it's the last class in a sequence that's required for graduation.
Right.
But they have not defined that term yet. So we're assuming, we don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm pleasantly surprised about that. Thank you.
any other public comments? See anybody else? Okay. Great, so that brings us to just our future meeting, so January 15th, 2025 here. And again, I'll bring in the RVTC, the principal report for John.
You'll be an action item for Division 27, like go to voters. Budget, so the question is everybody feeling comfortable enough with the budget that we can make that decision in January? Do we need another meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we discuss it about it.
I mean, it's level service. I don't think,
Right.
short of starting to recruit people.
Not much to
Do you have other thoughts?
No, I mean, that's.
Yep, so. I feel like there was a third thing I was gonna bring to it was the EO. Okay, is that the slave code available there?
He's joining right now.
Okay, all right, so if that's the case, then I would ask that we get voted into EO. Yes. On one day.
I move that the board find the public that public discussion on the current state of negotiations with the teachers and the GM support staff would clearly place the board at a disadvantage regarding those negotiations. I move.
Oh, gotta accept that one.
Second.
Jeff and Rick, okay,
Yeah.
all in favor?
Opposed? I move the board enter executive session with Cheryl Hammond, Lane Milliton, and Chris Leopold, as is allowed under one VSA 313, 1B, to discuss the state of labor negotiations with the teachers and with the GM support staff.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are in executive session at 7:18.
Me and my, there's a.
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh my goodness.
The recording is on.
Okay, so we are at the executive session at 8:06 and board takes no action.
13 and 6, right?
Okay,
Is it on
all right, motion to adjourn.
It's at 5:30.
Move.
Second.
So Scott, Jerry, all in favor?
Yep.
We
stuff.
are adjourned at 8:06.
Perfect.
A lot earlier than I thought.
Third work.
Did you see that? Corporate?
Yeah, I saw that. That was a great.
What is it? Oh, somebody signed in this year. Pretended to be here.
No.
13.
I was sure that.
January 13th.
Yeah, they shouldn't be getting involved. I can ask, I gotta come over tomorrow morning.
That's the executive session.
I have two questions for you.
Do you want to?
13th, my schedule's like, yeah.
That's good.
Yes.
You know what I mean?